Zachary Kennedy jolts awake to the sound of alien mating calls echoing from his front yard. His heart races as he stumbles out of bed, fumbling for his glasses on the nightstand. The clock reads 3:17 a.m. He rushes to the window, peering through the blinds. His jaw drops. 4 humanoid figures with iridescent blue skin writhe on his lawn, their bodies intertwined in what can only be described as an otherworldly mating ritual. Zachary blinks hard, certain he must still be dreaming. But the noise persists, a haunting melody of chirps and whistles that sends shivers down his spine. He recognizes the beings instantly from news reports. Binars, the newly discovered alien race known for their advanced technology and unique reproductive cycle. Zachary's mind reels. How did they end up in suburban Colorado? And why his front yard, of all places? He throws on a robe and cautiously steps outside. The cool night air hits his face as he approaches the alien visitors. Their leader, distinguishable by her elaborate head crest, notices him first. She disentangles herself from the group and stands, her large, almond-shaped eyes fixed on Zachary. "I am Uma," she says in halting English. "We seek help. Our ship. Malfunction. Mating season upon us. Must find suitable mates within 48 Earth hours, or our species faces extinction." Zachary's mouth goes dry. He glances at the other 3 binars, still engaged in their ritual. Their blue skin glistens with sweat, and he notices signs of distress in their movements. Uma continues, her voice urgent. "This mating cycle occurs once every 50 Earth years. We crash-landed here by accident. Our distress signal has been sent, but time is short." Before Zachary can respond, he hears the screech of tires. A black SUV pulls up, and out steps Major Helena Reeves, her face set in a grim expression. She marches towards them, hand on her holstered weapon. "Step away from the aliens, Mr. Kennedy," she barks. "This is now a matter of national security." Zachary hesitates, torn between following orders and the plea in Uma's eyes. He realizes that his next move could determine the fate of an entire species. Neighbors begin to emerge from their homes, drawn by the commotion. Whispers and gasps fill the air as they gather at the edge of Zachary's property, smartphones held high to capture the otherworldly scene. Uma steps closer to Zachary, her voice low and intense. "We can offer much to your people, our technology, our knowledge. But first, we must survive. Will you help us?" Major Reeves's voice cuts through the night. "This is your final warning, Mr. Kennedy. Step away now." Zachary's mind races. The fate of the binar species hangs in the balance, as does the potential for unprecedented advancements for humanity. But at what cost? The wrong move could spark an interstellar incident. He looks at the other 3 binar females, Zira, Lyra, and Vela, as Uma quickly introduces them. Their bodies tremble with the progression of their mating cycle, a stark reminder of the urgency of the situation. In that moment, Zachary makes his decision. He turns to Uma, his voice barely above a whisper. "Quick, all of you, into my house. We'll figure this out inside, away from prying eyes." As he ushers the binars towards his front door, Zachary knows his actions will have far-reaching consequences. He's about to become the focal point of human-alien relations, and possibly the savior of an alien race. The next 48 hours will test the limits of his courage, compassion, and understanding of interspecies compatibility. With a final glance at the astonished faces of his neighbors and the furious expression of Major Reeves, Zachary closes the door behind them, sealing himself in with 4 alien females in the throes of their mating season. The most extraordinary night of his life has only just begun. As the door closed behind them, Zachary found himself in his living room with 4 alien females in various states of distress. The sudden transition from the cool night air to the warmth of his home made him acutely aware of the surreal situation he had just thrust himself into. Uma immediately produced a small handheld device from a hidden compartment in her iridescent skin. It emitted a soft blue glow as she began to scan the room, her large eyes darting back and forth as she interpreted the data. "What are you doing?" Zachary asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Assessing the environment for compatibility and safety," Uma replied, her attention fixed on the device. Your dwelling appears suitable for our needs. Zachary's gaze shifted to the other three binars. Zira, Lyra, and Vela huddled together near his couch, their slender bodies trembling with increasing intensity. Their skin, a mesmerizing blend of blues and purples, seemed to pulse with an inner light that grew more frantic by the second. A muffled commotion outside caught Zachary's attention. He peered through a gap in the blinds to see Major Reeves directing her team to set up a perimeter around his property. The neighbors who had gathered to witness the spectacle were being ushered back to their homes by stern-faced officers. Zachary's phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out to see Major Reeves's name flashing on the screen. With a grimace, he silenced the call and turned back to Uma. "You mentioned your ship malfunctioned," he said. "Is there any way to contact your people for help?" Uma's expression tightened. "We sent a distress signal before crash landing, but our communication systems were damaged. We cannot be certain it was received." A sudden cry of pain drew their attention. Zira had collapsed to the floor, her once vibrant skin now a sickly gray. The other two binars rushed to her side, producing small medical devices from their own hidden compartments. "What's happening to her?" Zachary asked, his heart racing. Uma's voice was tight with urgency. "Zira's condition is deteriorating rapidly. Without completing the mating cycle, she will die within hours. The others will soon follow." She turned to face Zachary, her large eyes boring into his. "There is something you must know. Our initial scans have revealed that human DNA, particularly yours, is highly compatible with our physiology." Zachary's mouth went dry. "What are you saying?" "To save our species, we require a temporary mating bond," Uma explained. "The process will not harm you, and the bond is not permanent, but it is our only hope for survival." Zachary's mind reeled as he processed this information. The implications were staggering. He glanced at Zira's prone form, then back to Uma's pleading eyes. Before he could respond, a soft beep emanated from Uma's scanning device. She studied it intently, her expression shifting from concern to relief. "The house is secure," she announced. "I can now activate our bioshield." She pressed a series of buttons on the device, and a faint shimmer rippled through the air. Zachary felt a slight pressure in his ears, like the change in altitude during a flight. "What did you just do?" he asked. "I've created a temporary barrier around your home," Uma explained. "It will block all communication and surveillance from the outside world, giving us the privacy we need." As if on cue, Zachary's phone went dead in his hand. He looked out the window to see Major Reeves gesturing angrily at a device in her hand, presumably trying and failing to make contact. The gravity of the situation settled over Zachary like a heavy blanket. He turned back to Uma, his decision made. "All right," he said, his voice steadier than he felt. "I'll help you. What do I need to do?" Uma's relief was palpable. "We must begin with me," she said. "As the strongest, I have the best chance of success. Once stabilized, I can assist the others." She led Zachary to the center of the room, instructing him to sit cross-legged on the floor. As he complied, he watched the other binars tend to Zira, their movements becoming more frantic as her condition worsened. Uma knelt before him, her iridescent skin shimmering in the dim light of his living room. She placed her elongated fingers on either side of his face, her touch cool and electric. "Close your eyes," she instructed softly. "Open your mind to me." As Zachary's eyelids fluttered shut, he felt a surge of energy course through his body. His consciousness expanded, filled with vivid images of a world unlike anything he had ever seen. Towering crystal spires reached into a violet sky, while beings of pure light danced among the stars. He saw the history of the binar race unfold before him, their struggles, their triumphs, their hopes for the future. He felt their desperation, their fear of extinction, and their gratitude for his willingness to help. The exchange of energy and genetic material was unlike anything Zachary had ever experienced. It was intimate yet distant, physical yet ethereal. He lost all sense of time as the mating ritual progressed, his mind and body pushed to their limits. As the process neared its completion, Zachary became aware of the other binars watching intently. Their bodies had stabilized somewhat, drawing strength from Uma's success. With a final surge of energy, the ritual concluded. Uma's eyes snapped open, her skin now glowing with renewed vitality. She smiled at Zachary, her gratitude evident in her gaze. But there was no time to rest. Zira's condition had continued to deteriorate, and it was clear she needed immediate attention. Uma helped Zachary to his feet, his legs unsteady beneath him. "You must mate with Zira next," she said urgently. "She is the weakest and requires immediate intervention." Zachary nodded, still reeling from the intensity of the experience. As he moved towards Zira, he caught a glimpse of movement outside. The bioshield had flickered momentarily during the ritual, allowing a brief burst of communication. Through the window, he saw Major Reeves barking orders into a radio, her face a mask of willpower. In the distance, a faint light appeared in the sky, a new star growing steadily brighter. The binar rescue ship had arrived, adding a new level of urgency to their race against time. As Zachary prepared to begin the mating ritual with Zira, he knew that the next few hours would determine not only the fate of the binar species, but also the future of human-alien relations. Uma worked to strengthen the bioshield as Zachary and Zira began their connection. Outside, the world held its breath, unaware of the extraordinary events unfolding within the walls of a suburban Colorado home. House. As Zachary prepared to begin the mating ritual with Zira, he felt a wave of exhaustion wash over him. The experience with Uma had been intense, and he knew this next connection would demand even more from him. Zira lay on the floor, her once vibrant skin now a sickly gray. Her chest rose and fell in shallow, rapid breaths, each one seeming more labored than the last. Uma knelt beside her, holding her hand and murmuring words of encouragement in their native tongue. Zachary took a deep breath and positioned himself next to Zira. He placed his hands on either side of her face, mirroring the position Uma had taken with him earlier. As soon as their skin made contact, he felt a jolt of energy course through his body. "Focus, Zachary," Uma urged. "Zira's condition is critical. You must establish the connection quickly." Closing his eyes, Zachary concentrated on opening his mind to Zira. The process was more difficult this time, like trying to tune into a weak radio signal. He pushed harder, feeling sweat bead on his forehead, as he strained to make the connection. Suddenly, he was plunged into a swirling vortex of images and sensations. He saw towering crystal cities bathed in the light of twin suns, felt the cool touch of a strange, shimmering liquid that seemed to defy gravity. He experienced Zira's memories of a world so alien yet so beautiful that it took his breath away. But beneath the wonder, he sensed a growing unease. He saw the crystal spires cracking, the shimmering liquid turning murky and lifeless. He felt Zira's fear as her people faced a crisis that threatened their very existence. Outside the house, Major Reeves paced back and forth, her frustration mounting with each passing moment. The sudden silence from within the house and the inability to make contact with Zachary had set her on edge. "Prep the breaching equipment," she barked at her team. "We're going in." As her team scrambled to obey, Reeves cast a wary glance at the sky. The new star that had appeared was growing larger by the minute, and she knew it could only mean one thing. Reinforcements for the aliens were on their way. Inside, Lyra and Vela hovered anxiously over Zachary and Zira, monitoring the mating ritual with their advanced medical devices. The process was taking longer than expected, and Zachary's vitals were showing signs of strain. "His energy levels are dropping dangerously low," Lyra reported, her voice tight with concern. Uma nodded grimly. "We must trust in his strength. There is no other way." As the ritual reached its climax, Zachary felt as if he were being torn apart and reassembled at the molecular level. His consciousness expanded to encompass both his human self and something entirely alien. For a moment, he lost all sense of his physical body, existing as pure energy intertwined with Zira's essence. With a gasp, Zachary's eyes flew open. He found himself lying on the floor, his body drenched in sweat. Zira stirred beside him, her skin slowly regaining its healthy blue hue. "It worked," Uma breathed, relief evident in her voice. "Zira is stabilizing." Before Zachary could respond, a loud explosion rocked the house. The front door burst inward in a shower of splinters, and Major Reeves stormed in with her team, weapons raised. "Freeze!" Reeves shouted, her eyes widening as she took in the scene before her. Uma reacted instantly, activating a personal force field that enveloped the binars and Zachary. The shimmering barrier sprang to life just as Reeves's team opened fire, the bullets dissipating harmlessly against the energy field. "Wait," Zachary croaked, his voice hoarse. "Don't shoot. They're not a threat." Reeves hesitated, her weapon still trained on the group. "Mr. Kennedy, are you all right? What's going on here?" Before Zachary could explain, a piercing whine filled the air. The binar females looked up in unison, their expressions a mix of relief and apprehension. "Our rescue ship," Uma said. "They're attempting to establish communication." The room filled with static, punctuated by bursts of an alien language. Uma's force field seemed to be interfering with the transmission, causing the message to break up. Suddenly, Lyra and Vela doubled over in pain. Their skin began to pulse with an eerie light, a clear sign that their mating cycle was progressing unchecked. "Zachary," Uma said urgently, "we must complete the ritual with Lyra and Vela immediately, or they will not survive." Major Reeves took a step forward, her face a mask of confusion and anger. "Nobody moves until I get some answers." The tension in the room reached a fever pitch. Zachary, still weak from the intense mating rituals, struggled to find the words to explain the delicate situation. Uma attempted to communicate with Reeves, but the language barrier in the human sphere made understanding impossible. Outside, the night sky lit up as the binar rescue ship entered the lower atmosphere. The brilliant light drew gasps from the gathering crowd of neighbors and newly arrived media personnel. Inside the ship, Captain Nexus observed the chaotic scene unfolding in Zachary's house with growing alarm. The ship's sensors indicated that 2 of the binar females were in critical condition, and the human military presence posed a significant threat to the mission's success. "We have no choice," Nexus declared to his crew. "Initiate emergency teleportation. Target the energy signatures of our people." As the teleportation sequence began, the lingering effects of Uma's bioshield interfered with the process. The energy field surrounding Zachary and the binar females pulsed and writhed, growing brighter by the second. Major Reeves, sensing something was about to happen, lunged forward. "Kennedy!" Her fingers brushed against the energy field just as it reached its peak intensity. There was a blinding flash of light, accompanied by a thunderous crack that shook the entire house. When the light faded, Zachary and the 4 binar females had vanished, leaving behind a stunned and bewildered group of human soldiers. In the binar ship's teleportation chamber, alarms blared as the emergency transport completed. Captain Nexus rushed to the chamber, only to stop short at the sight that greeted him. Zachary stood in the center of the room, his body shimmering with an otherworldly light. The 4 binar females were arranged around him in a perfect circle, their bodies seeming to phase in and out of sync with reality. Tendrils of energy connected them all, pulsing with a rhythm that matched the ship's own power core. "By the gods," Nexus whispered, "what have we done?" As the ship's crew scrambled to make sense of the unprecedented human-binar integration, Zachary struggled to comprehend his new state of existence. He could feel the thoughts and emotions of Uma, Zira, Lyra, and Vela as if they were his own. Their shared consciousness expanded, encompassing not just their individual experiences, but the entire history and collective knowledge of the binar species. Alarms continued to sound throughout the ship as its systems struggled to cope with the unexpected energy readings emanating from the hybrid being at the center of the teleportation chamber. Captain Nexus barked orders to his crew, demanding status reports and potential solutions. Back on Earth, Major Reeves stared at the empty space where Zachary and the aliens had been moments before. Her mind raced, trying to process the implications of what she had just witnessed. The sound of jets overhead snapped her back to reality. The U.S. military was mobilizing in response to the alien ship's presence. As Reeves began coordinating with her superiors, she knew that the next few hours would determine the course of human history. The world had changed irrevocably, and she was at the center of it all. In orbit, the binar ship hovered silently above the Earth, its crew working frantically to stabilize the unprecedented merging of human and binar biology. Captain Nexus faced an impossible decision: return the hybrid being to Earth and risk further complications, or keep them aboard and face the wrath of a frightened and potentially hostile human population. As the ship's sensors detected the approach of human military vessels, the clock began ticking on a resolution to this interstellar crisis. The fate of two species now rested in the hands of a suburban Colorado man and four alien females, their bodies and minds merged in ways that defied understanding. The binar ship maintained its position, a silent sentinel above a world on the brink of monumental change. In the teleportation chamber, Zachary and the binar females floated in their strange new form, their shared consciousness expanding to encompass the vastness of space and the infinite possibilities that lay before them. As Zachary's consciousness expanded, he felt a sudden jolt, as if his entire being was being pulled apart and reassembled. The ethereal connection with the binar females intensified, their minds merging into a collective consciousness that defied human understanding. Captain Nexus burst into the teleportation chamber, his eyes wide with shock. "What in the name of the cosmic elders is happening?" he demanded, his voice barely audible over the blaring alarms. Dr. Syra, the ship's chief medical officer, rushed to the scene, her handheld scanner already humming with activity. She swept the device over the floating forms of Zachary and the binar females, her expression growing more concerned with each passing second. "Captain," she said, her voice trembling slightly, "the teleportation has resulted in a partial molecular bonding between the human and our females. Their DNA, it's intertwining at an unprecedented rate." Nexus's face paled. "Can you separate them?" Dr. Syra shook her head. "Not without potentially fatal consequences. The bonding is too advanced." As the medical team worked frantically to stabilize the hybrid beings, Zachary's mind reeled from the flood of alien memories and knowledge pouring into his consciousness. He saw glimpses of the binar homeworld, felt the desperation of a species on the brink of extinction, and understood the weight of the mission that had brought them to Earth. Suddenly, Zachary's eyes snapped open, glowing with an otherworldly light. "Lyra, Vela," he gasped, his voice a strange mix of human and binar tones. Dr. Syra's scanner beeped urgently. "Captain, the molecular bonding has accelerated the mating process for Lyra and Vela. Their vital signs are improving?" Indeed, the two binar females who had not yet mated with Zachary began to stir, their skin regaining its healthy blue hue. The energy tendrils connecting all five beings pulsed with renewed vigor. Captain Nexus opened his mouth to respond when a communication officer burst into the chamber. "Sir, we're receiving an urgent transmission from the Binar High Council." Nexus's expression hardened. "Put it through to my personal comm." As the captain stepped aside to receive the transmission, Dr. Syra continued her examination of the hybrid beings. Her eyes widened as she analyzed the data on her scanner. "This is incredible," she murmured. "The hybridization process has not only saved Lyra and Vela, but it appears to have enhanced the reproductive capabilities of all four females." Zachary, still floating in the center of the energy field, turned his head towards the doctor. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of centuries of binar knowledge. "The key to your species' survival, it's here, in this union." Before Dr. Syra could respond, Captain Nexus returned, his face a mask of conflicting emotions. "The High Council has ordered us to return to the homeworld immediately," he announced. "They want to study this." As if on cue, the ship's sensors blared another warning. The communication officer's voice crackled over the intercom. "Captain, 3 Earth vessels have entered our sensor range. They're demanding the return of Zachary Kennedy and threatening military action." Nexus's eyes darted between the hybrid beings and the view screen showing the approaching Earth ships. "By the cosmic elders," he muttered, "what have we stumbled into?" Dr. Syra's voice cut through the tension. "Captain, we need to stabilize their condition before we can consider any course of action. I need time to study this hybridization process." Zachary's eyes locked onto Nexus, his gaze intense and otherworldly. "Captain," he said, his voice resonating with the combined will of human and binar, "I believe I have a solution, but we must act quickly." As Nexus leaned in to hear Zachary's plan, the ship's engines hummed to life, preparing for the possibility of evasive maneuvers. Outside, the Earth vessels closed in, their weapon systems powering up. The next few moments would determine the fate of not just Zachary and the binar females, but potentially the future of both species. In the teleportation chamber, the hybrid being that was once Zachary Kennedy and 4 binar females pulsed with energy, a living symbol of the unprecedented union between 2 vastly different species. As Captain Nexus weighed his options, the ship hovered in Earth's orbit, caught between the demands of the Binar High Council and the threats of the human military. The stage was set for a confrontation that would reshape the course of interstellar relations forever. The tense standoff in Earth's orbit stretched on, with Captain Nexus caught between the demands of the Binar High Council and the threats of the human military. Suddenly, the ship's sensors detected a massive solar flare erupting from the sun, barreling towards them at incredible speed. "Evasive maneuvers," Nexus barked, his fingers flying across the control panel. "Set course for Mars orbit." The binar ship's engines roared to life, propelling them away from Earth just as the first waves of intense radiation washed over the planet. Behind them, the human vessels scattered, their less advanced shielding leaving them vulnerable to the solar storm. In the teleportation chamber, Zachary and the 4 binar females continued to float in their strange, hybridized state. Dr. Sarah worked feverishly, her eyes darting between her instruments and the pulsing energy field surrounding the merged beings. As they approached Mars orbit, Dr. Sarah's eyes widened. "Captain," she called out, her voice tinged with excitement, "I've made a breakthrough." Nexus rushed to her side, his antennae twitching with anticipation. "What is it, Doctor?" Dr. Sarah's fingers danced across her console, bringing up a series of complex molecular diagrams. "I've developed a temporary stabilization method using a combination of our biotechnology and human DNA sequencing. It should buy us an additional 72 hours before the molecular bonds begin to degrade." Nexus nodded, his expression grave. "That may be just the time we need. Implement your solution immediately." As Dr. Syra began the stabilization process, the ship's communication officer called out, "Captain, we're detecting multiple human vessels entering Mars orbit. They've surrounded us." Nexus gritted his teeth. "It seems Colonel Reeves is persistent. Open a channel." Before he could hail the human fleet, Zachary's eyes snapped open, glowing with an otherworldly light. "Wait," he said, his voice a strange blend of human and binar tones. "Let me speak to them." Nexus hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "Very well. We'll use our communication array to broadcast your message to Earth as well." As the crew prepared the transmission, Zachary closed his eyes, drawing upon the vast well of knowledge now at his disposal. When he opened them again, his gaze was clear and determined. "People of Earth," he began, his voice resonating with newfound authority. "I am Zachary Kennedy. What you are witnessing is not an invasion or an act of aggression, but a remarkable accident that may hold the key to 2 species' survival." He went on to explain the binar's desperate situation, the accidental hybridization, and the potential benefits of human-binar cooperation. As he spoke, the energy field around him and the binar females pulsed with increasing intensity. "We stand at a crossroads," Zachary continued. "We can choose fear and conflict, or we can embrace this opportunity for understanding and growth. The choice is ours." As his impassioned plea reached Earth, it sparked a global sensation. Debates raged across every continent, with some calling for peaceful negotiations, while others demanded immediate military action. Aboard the binar ship, Captain Nexus received an urgent communication from the High Council. Their orders were clear: proceed immediately to the binar homeworld with Zachary and the hybridized females. Nexus's antennae drooped as he considered the implications. Complying with the order would mean defying Earth's military and potentially igniting an interstellar conflict. Before he could respond, the ship's sensors blared a warning. "Captain," the science officer called out, "another solar flare is approaching, far more intense than the last." Nexus's eyes widened. "Raise shields to maximum." The binar ship's advanced shielding activated just as the massive wave of radiation struck. Protected within their energy bubble, they watched as the human vessels were forced to retreat to a safe distance, leaving them isolated in Mars orbit. Taking advantage of this unexpected reprieve, Dr. Sierra redoubled her efforts to study the hybrid state. Her instruments hummed as she delved deeper into the unique molecular structure created by the merging of human and binar DNA. Suddenly, Zachary convulsed, his body racked by seizures. The other binar females twitched in sync with him, their shared consciousness overwhelmed by a surge of information. "What's happening?" Nexus demanded, rushing to the teleportation chamber. Dr. Sierra's fingers flew across her console. "The hybridization is accelerating. Zachary's mind is accessing the collective knowledge of our entire species. It's too much for his human brain to process all at once." As Zachary's condition deteriorated, Nexus made a split-second decision. "Prepare the faster-than-light drive," he ordered. "We need to get them to our homeworld immediately." The crew scrambled to comply, but as they initiated the drive sequence, the ongoing solar storm interfered with the activation. The ship shuddered, energy arcing across its hull. "Captain!" the navigation officer shouted. "Something's wrong with the drive!" Before Nexus could respond, a blinding flash engulfed the ship. When it faded, they found themselves surrounded by a shimmering bubble of distorted spacetime, hovering just above the Martian surface. "Where are we?" Nexus asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The science officer studied her readings, her antennae twitching in confusion. "We're out of phase with normal spacetime, Captain. We're trapped in a localized distortion." As the implications of their situation sank in, Dr. Sierra's voice cut through the stunned silence. "Captain, you need to see this." Nexus turned to find Zachary and the binar females suspended in their energy field, their bodies pulsing with a steady, harmonious rhythm. The seizures had stopped, and a look of serene understanding had settled on Zachary's face. "What's happening to them?" Nexus asked. Dr. Sierra's eyes gleamed with excitement. "They're adapting, Captain, and I think they might be the key to everything." As the crew of the binar ship grappled with their new reality, trapped in a bubble of warped space-time near the surface of Mars, they remained unaware of the frantic activity taking place beyond their distorted sanctuary. The stage was set for a convergence of cosmic proportions, with the fate of two species hanging in the balance. As the crew of the binar ship grappled with their new reality, trapped in a bubble of warped space-time near the surface of Mars, the energy surrounding Zachary and the binar females began to pulsate with increasing intensity. Captain Nexus watched in awe as the hybrid beings seemed to synchronize with the distorted space around them. Suddenly, the ship's sensors blared a warning. "Captain," the science officer called out, her antennae twitching nervously. "The space-time bubble is collapsing." Nexus sprang into action, his fingers flying across the control panel. "Initiate emergency stabilization protocols," he ordered, his voice steady despite the chaos unfolding around them. The ship shuddered as the bubble began to contract. Dr. Sierra worked furiously at her console, attempting to maintain the delicate balance of the hybrid being's molecular structure. "We're losing cohesion," she shouted over the din of alarms. In the center of the teleportation chamber, Zachary's eyes snapped open, glowing with an otherworldly light. He reached out, connecting with the ship's systems through his newfound abilities. "I can help," he said, his voice a blend of human persistence and binar efficiency. As Zachary interfaced with the ship's technology, the space-time distortion began to stabilize. The violent shaking subsided, replaced by a gentle vibration. Captain Nexus watched in amazement as the sensors indicated a controlled re-entry into normal space-time. With a final, brilliant flash of light, the binar ship materialized in Mars orbit. As the crew regained their bearings, they found themselves in the middle of a tense standoff between the human fleet and newly arrived binar reinforcements. "Status report," Nexus demanded, his eyes darting between the view screen and his console. "We've successfully re-entered normal space-time, Captain," the navigation officer responded. "But we're directly between the human and binar fleets. Both sides appear to be in defensive positions." Zachary, now fully adapted to his hybrid state, stepped forward. "Captain, I can broadcast a message to both fleets. We need to explain what happened and prevent any misunderstandings." Nexus nodded, giving Zachary access to the ship's communication array. The hybrid being closed his eyes, concentrating as he connected with the advanced binar technology. When he spoke, his voice resonated with a newfound authority that carried across the communication channels to both fleets. "This is Zachary Kennedy," he began, his words echoing through the command centers of every ship in orbit. "What you've just witnessed is not an act of aggression, but a scientific breakthrough that could benefit both our species." As Zachary explained the events that had transpired within the space-time bubble, including Dr. Sayra's breakthrough in stabilizing the hybrid state, the tense atmosphere began to shift. His impassioned plea for cooperation and understanding seemed to resonate with many on both sides. Aboard the lead human vessel, Colonel Helena Reeves received a direct communication from Earth. President Jonathan Hartwell's face appeared on her view screen, his expression grave but determined. "Colonel Reeves," the president said, "I'm ordering you to stand down. We're sending Dr. Elias Chen's diplomatic vessel to approach the Binar ship. This is an opportunity for peaceful negotiation that we can't afford to miss." Reeves hesitated for a moment, her military instincts warring with her duty to follow orders. Finally, she nodded. "Understood, Mr. President. We'll maintain our position, but will not engage unless provoked." As Dr. Chen's ship broke away from the human fleet and approached the Binar vessel, Captain Nexus received a transmission from the Binar High Council. The eldest council member's face appeared on the monitor, his antennae twitching with a mix of curiosity and concern. "Captain Nexus," the counselor said, "we've received the hybrid being's transmission. The potential to solve our species' fertility crisis is intriguing. We agree to negotiations. Prepare to receive our diplomatic envoy." As both human and Binar diplomatic teams boarded the ship, Dr. Sayra hurriedly prepared her findings for presentation. Zachary and the 4 Binar females, Uma, Zira, Lyra, and Vela, stood ready to demonstrate the remarkable changes they had undergone. The diplomatic teams gathered in the ship's conference room, an air of cautious optimism permeating the space. Dr. Chen, a tall, slender man with kind eyes and a thoughtful demeanor, stepped forward to greet Captain Nexus and Dr. Sayra. "Thank you for agreeing to these talks," Dr. Chen said, his voice warm but professional. "We're eager to understand more about this hybrid state and its potential implications for both our species." As Dr. Sayra began her presentation, displaying complex molecular diagrams and physiological readouts, Zachary stepped forward to demonstrate his newfound abilities. With a mere thought, he interfaced with the ship's systems, bringing up detailed schematics and data streams that left the human scientists in awe. "As you can see," Dr. Sayra explained, her antennae quivering with excitement, "the hybrid state has not only stabilized, but has also enhanced both human and Binar physiologies. Zachary's strength, healing capabilities, and technological interface abilities have all been dramatically improved." The Binar diplomats leaned forward, their eyes wide as Dr. Sayra presented the results of the female Binar's medical examinations. "Most importantly," she continued, "the reproductive systems of Uma, Zira, Lyra, and Vela have shown remarkable improvement. This could be the key to solving our species' long-standing fertility issues." A wave of excited murmurs swept through the Binar delegation. However, Dr. Chen's expression grew troubled. He cleared his throat, drawing the attention of the room. "While these findings are indeed remarkable," he began cautiously, "I must bring up a concern. Our preliminary analysis suggests that prolonged exposure to the hybrid state might have unforeseen consequences for Earth's ecosystem if Zachary were to return." The room fell silent as the implications of Dr. Chen's words sank in. Captain Nexus's antenna drooped slightly as he considered the complex situation they now faced. Before anyone could respond, the ship's alarms blared to life. The science officer's voice came over the intercom, urgent and alarmed. "Captain, we're detecting a massive solar flare heading directly for Mars orbit. Its intensity far exceeds anything we've encountered before." Captain Nexus sprung into action, his fingers dancing across the nearest console. "All hands, battle stations, prepare for emergency maneuvers." As the diplomatic team scrambled to secure themselves, Zachary's eyes began to glow with that now familiar hybrid energy. He turned to Captain Nexus, his voice resonating with the combined knowledge of human and Binar. "Captain," he said, his tone confident and determined, "I have an idea, but we'll need to act fast. The tension in the room was palpable, as all eyes turned to Zachary, the fate of two species hanging in the balance as the solar storm raced towards them. Zachary's eyes locked with Captain Nexus's, a silent understanding passing between them. Without hesitation, Nexus nodded, giving Zachary the go-ahead to implement his plan. "Everyone, brace yourselves," Zachary announced, his voice resonating with newfound authority. He turned to Uma, Zira, Lyra, and Vela, extending his hands. "We need to form a neural link. It's our only chance to protect both fleets." The four binar females moved to surround Zachary, their eyes glowing with the same hybrid energy. As their hands connected, a visible current of energy pulsed between them, creating a circuit of shared consciousness. Captain Nexus's fingers flew across the ship's main console, rerouting power to support the hybrid network. "Initiating energy transfer to the teleportation chamber," he reported, his antennae twitching with nervous energy. Dr. Chen watched in fascination as Zachary and the binar females began to interface with the ship's systems. Holographic displays sprang to life around them, data streams flowing at an incomprehensible rate. "What are they doing?" Dr. Chen asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Dr. Sierra's eyes widened as she interpreted the data flowing across her screen. "They're channeling energy through the experimental, faster-than-light drive," she explained, her voice tinged with awe. "They're creating a protective field." Outside the ship, a shimmering barrier of energy began to form, expanding outward at an incredible rate. The human and binar diplomats watched in amazement as the field enveloped their ships, then continued to grow. Suddenly, the ship's communication system crackled to life. Admiral Krasnov's face appeared on the main screen, his expression a mix of anger and suspicion. "Binar vessel, power down your weapons immediately. This is your final warning." Before Captain Nexus could respond, the screen lit up with multiple incoming missiles from the human fleet. The bridge crew braced for impact, but the projectiles dissipated harmlessly against the growing energy field. "Admiral, please!" Dr. Chen shouted, pushing his way to the front of the communication array. "This isn't an attack. They're protecting us from the solar flare." As if on cue, the sensors blared a warning. The massive solar flare struck with full force, bathing the area in intense radiation. The protective field shimmered and flexed under the onslaught, but held firm. Inside the teleportation chamber, Zachary and the binar females strained to maintain the field. Sweat beaded on their foreheads, their bodies trembling with the effort of channeling such immense energy. "Captain," Dr. Sarah called out, her voice tight with concern, "their vital signs are becoming erratic. I'm not sure how long they can maintain this." Captain Nexus's antennae drooped with worry, but he kept his voice steady. "Hold on, all of you. Just a little longer." On the bridge of the human flagship, Admiral Krasnov stared in disbelief at the readings on his console. His weapons officer turned to him, confusion evident in his voice. "Sir, our systems are stable. We're completely shielded from the radiation." Krasnov's eyes narrowed as he watched the spectacular light show of deflected solar energy playing out before him. His finger hovered over the command to launch another volley of missiles, but something held him back. Back on the binar ship, Dr. Chen's mind raced as he observed the incredible feat being performed by the hybrid network. He turned to Captain Nexus, his eyes alight with sudden understanding. "Captain, we need to contact Earth immediately," he said urgently. "This is the proof we need to show the potential of human binar cooperation. We can end this conflict right now." As Dr. Chen worked to establish a secure link to President Hartwell, the strain on Zachary and the binar females intensified. Their merged consciousness expanded, encompassing the space around them. Visions flashed through their shared mind, glimpses of a future where humans and binars worked side by side, their combined knowledge and abilities pushing the boundaries of what was possible. The solar storm raged on, its fury slowly diminishing as the minutes ticked by. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the sensors indicated the worst had passed. "They did it," Dr. Sierra breathed, her antennae quivering with relief and excitement. "Both fleets are safe." As the protective field began to dissipate, Zachary and the binar females collapsed, their hybrid physiologies pushed to the limit. Dr. Sierra rushed to their side, her medical scanner whirring as she assessed their conditions. "We need to stabilize them immediately," she announced, her voice tight with concern. "The melding of their minds has created a deeper bond than we anticipated. Their hybrid state is becoming unstable." Captain Nexus moved to assist, but a warning klaxon stopped him in his tracks. The navigation officer's voice rang out, filled with alarm. "Captain, Admiral Krasnov's ship has broken formation. They're on an intercept course with us." On the main view screen, Krasnov's vessel could be seen approaching rapidly, its weapons ports open and ready to fire. The Admiral's face appeared once more, his face hardened in iron will. "I'm taking Zachary Kennedy into protective custody," Krasnov declared. "Prepare to be boarded." Captain Nexus's antenna flattened against his head as he activated the ship's defense systems. "Admiral, stand down," he warned. "Your actions threaten the peace we've just achieved." As the two ships faced off, the future of human binar relations hung in the balance. Dr. Chen worked feverishly to relay the situation to Earth, hoping that cooler heads would prevail. Meanwhile, in the teleportation chamber, Dr. Sarah fought to stabilize Zachary and the binar females, knowing that their survival could be the key to lasting peace between their species. The standoff intensified, with Krasnov's ship drawing ever closer. Captain Nexus's finger hovered over the weapons console, ready to defend his vessel if necessary. The next few moments would determine whether the incredible feat of cooperation they had just witnessed would lead to a new era of peace, or plunge both species back into conflict. The tension in the air was palpable as Captain Nexus's finger hovered over the weapons console. Just as it seemed conflict was inevitable, a new voice crackled over the comm system. "Admiral Krasnov, stand down immediately. This is Colonel Helena Reeves, acting on direct orders from President Hartwell." A sleek vessel maneuvered between Krasnov's ship and the binar craft, effectively blocking his approach. Krasnov's face contorted with frustration as he realized his position had become untenable. Meanwhile, in the teleportation chamber, Dr. Sarah worked feverishly to stabilize Zachary and the four binar females. Her antennae twitched rapidly as she combined human medical techniques with advanced binar biotechnology, her fingers dancing across holographic displays. "I think I've got it," she muttered, adjusting a final setting on her medical device. A soft blue light enveloped the hybrid group, and slowly their vital signs began to normalize. Zachary's eyes fluttered open first, followed by Uma, Zira, Lyra, and Vela. They looked at each other with a newfound sense of connection, their shared experience having forged an unbreakable bond. "How do you feel?" Dr. Syra asked, her scanner whirring as she checked their readings. Zachary sat up, his movements more fluid than before. "Different," he replied, his voice tinged with wonder. "Stronger, somehow." Uma's antennae quivered as she spoke. "Our minds, they're still linked, but it's different now, more stable." Dr. Chen, who had been observing from the side, stepped forward with a look of fascination. "Incredible. It seems the stress of maintaining that protective field has catalyzed further changes in your hybrid physiologies." As if to demonstrate, Zachary raised his hand towards a nearby console. The holographic display sprang to life without him touching it, responding to his mere thought. "Fascinating," Dr. Chen murmured, already formulating a series of tests in his mind. Their attention was drawn back to the bridge as Captain Nexus's voice came over the intercom. "Admiral Krasnov has stood down. The immediate crisis has been averted." A collective sigh of relief swept through the room, but it was short-lived. The ship's long-range sensors suddenly blared an alert, drawing everyone's attention to the main view screen. "Captain," the navigation officer called out, his antennae twitching nervously. "We're detecting an object approaching Mars at an incredible velocity. It's not like anything we've seen before." The view screen displayed a blurred image of the approaching entity, its form indistinct, but clearly neither human nor binar in design. Captain Nexus's fingers flew across his console. "I'm receiving a transmission from Earth. President Hartwell is ordering the formation of a joint human binar defense task force." He paused, his antennae perking up in surprise. "And he's appointing Colonel Reeves and myself as its leaders." Dr. Chen turned to Zachary and the binar females, his eyes alight with an idea. "Your enhanced abilities, perhaps you could use them to analyze this object?" Zachary nodded, a determined look crossing his face. "We can create a hybrid neural network, like we did during the solar flare. It might give us the edge we need to understand what we're dealing with." Dr. Sierra stepped forward, her expression concerned. "I must advise caution. Your physiology has only just stabilized. We don't know what kind of strain this could put on you." "We have to try," Zachary insisted, with Uma, Zira, Lyra, and Vela nodding in agreement. As they prepared to interface with the ship's advanced sensor array, Dr. Chen's expression suddenly changed. He stared at his data pad, his face paling. "Dr. Chen?" Captain Nexus inquired, noticing the human scientist's distress. Chen looked up, his voice quiet but urgent. "I've been analyzing Zachary's latest genetic scans. The hybrid state, it's altering his DNA at a fundamental level. If this continues, it could affect his ability to reproduce with non-hybrid humans." The implications of this revelation hung heavy in the air, but there was no time to dwell on it. The unknown object was rapidly approaching, and decisions had to be made. Captain Nexus straightened, his voice firm. "Proceed with the scan. We'll deal with the long-term implications later." Zachary and the 4 binar females positioned themselves around the sensor array. They joined hands, forming a circle, and closed their eyes. The ship's systems hummed to life around them as their hybrid minds merged with the technology. The main view screen flickered, displaying a flood of data as the group probed the approaching object. Suddenly, Zachary's eyes snapped open, glowing with an otherworldly light. There's something alive in there," he gasped, his voice strained. "A consciousness, but it's so alien, so vast." The others in the circle began to tremble, their faces contorting with effort. Dr. Syra's medical scanner beeped urgently as their vital signs began to fluctuate wildly. "We need to stop this now," she called out, moving towards the group. But before anyone could intervene, Zachary let out a cry of pain. The ship's systems surged, overloading with the influx of data. Sparks flew from consoles as the hybrid neural network struggled to contain the alien presence they had inadvertently contacted. Captain Nexus barked orders to his crew, trying to stabilize the ship's systems. Dr. Chen and Dr. Syra rushed to support the faltering hybrid group. As alarms blared and crew members scrambled to respond, the fate of the human binar alliance hung in the balance, with an unknown threat hurtling ever closer to Mars. As alarms blared and crew members scrambled to respond, the fate of the human binar alliance hung in the balance, with an unknown threat hurtling ever closer to the red planet. Suddenly, Zachary's eyes snapped open, his gaze locked onto an unseen point in space. The 4 binar females, Uma, Zira, Lyra, and Vela, gasped in unison, their antennae vibrating in perfect synchronization. "We've made contact," Zachary announced, his voice resonating with an otherworldly timbre. "The object, it's alive, sentient." Dr. Chen leaned forward, his eyes wide with fascination. "Can you communicate with it?" Zachary nodded, his movements fluid and precise. "It calls itself the Nexus. It's a ship, but also more. It belongs to a race called the progenitors." Captain Nexus's antennae twitched with interest. "Progenitors? What do they want?" As Zachary opened his mouth to respond, the ship's sensors erupted with new data. The main view screen flickered to life, displaying a massive object entering Mars' orbit. Its surface shimmered with an iridescent glow, defying conventional design principles. "By the stars," Dr. Syra breathed, her medical scanner forgotten in her hand. The hybrid team's bodies began to convulse, their forms flickering as if phasing in and out of reality. Dr. Sierra's scanner shrieked with urgent warnings. "Their genetic structure is altering at an exponential rate," she exclaimed, rushing to stabilize their vital signs. Zachary's eyes glowed with an intense blue light as he spoke, his voice layered with multiple tones. "The Nexus. It's awakening something within us. Dormant genes left by the progenitors." Uma's antennae extended, reaching out to an unseen presence. "We can sense everything. Everyone. The thoughts of the entire fleet." Dr. Chen's datapad beeped insistently. He glanced at it, his face paling. The hybridization process is accelerating beyond our predictions. If we don't stabilize it soon, before he could finish, a massive holographic projection materialized above Mars, visible to every ship in the vicinity. It depicted a vivid tapestry of intertwining DNA strands, clearly showing the shared genetic heritage of humans and binars. Captain Nexus stared at the projection, his antennae drooping in shock. Impossible! We're related? The ship's communication array crackled to life, Colonel Helena Reeves's voice cutting through the chaos. Captain Nexus, we're detecting multiple cyber attacks on Earth's command centers. We've lost direct contact with High Command. What's your status? Captain Nexus struggled to formulate a response, his eyes darting between the holographic projection and the convulsing hybrid team. Colonel, we're dealing with a situation beyond our understanding. The alien object, it's... His words were cut short as a new ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel near their position. Dr. Nira's voice filled the bridge. This is Dr. Nira. I'm receiving the holographic transmission. Captain Nexus, we need to act fast. The Nexus could be the key to unlocking our species' full potential. As the leaders debated their next move, Dr. Sarah's voice rose in urgency. We're losing them. Their hybrid physiology can't handle the rapid changes. Zachary's body arched in pain, his voice strained as he fought to maintain control. The Nexus, it's trying to help, sending data, stabilization procedure. Captain Nexus turned to his science officer. Can we process the data in time? The officer's antennae drooped. Negative, Captain. The information is too complex for our systems to analyze quickly enough. Zachary's eyes locked onto Captain Nexus, his gaze intense despite the pain racking his body. We need to interface directly with the Nexus, our hybrid network. It's the only way. Uma, Zira, Lyra, and Vela nodded in agreement, their movements perfectly synchronized despite their deteriorating condition. Dr. Sarah stepped forward, her voice filled with concern. Captain, the risk is too great. We don't know what full neural contact with an alien consciousness could do to them. Captain Nexus's antennae twitched as he weighed the options. After a moment's hesitation, he nodded. Proceed, it's our only chance. As the hybrid team prepared to link with the Nexus, Colonel Reeves's voice cut through once more, tension evident in her tone. Captain Nexus, I'm receiving orders to open fire on the alien ship. We need to know if it's a threat. I can't hold off much longer. Captain Nexus's fingers hovered over the communication panel, the weight of the decision pressing down on him. Colonel, I urge you to wait. We're on the verge of a breakthrough that could change everything. In the center of the bridge, Zachary and the 4 binar females formed a circle, their hands clasped tightly. Their eyes closed in unison as they reached out with their minds, pushing past the boundaries of their own consciousness. The ship's systems surged with energy as the hybrid network made contact with the Nexus. Zachary's eyes snapped open, glowing with an otherworldly light. We're in. The knowledge, it's overwhelming. As the hybrid team delved deeper into the ancient progenitor technology, their bodies began to stabilize, the chaotic genetic changes slowing to a manageable pace. Dr. Syra monitored their vital signs, her antennae twitching with cautious optimism. Captain Nexus turned back to the communication array, his voice firm. Colonel Reeves, hold your fire. We're making progress. The fate of both our species hangs in the balance. The bridge fell silent save for the gentle hum of the ship's systems and the synchronized breathing of the hybrid team. As they raced to unlock the secrets of their shared genetic heritage, the future of human-binar relations teetered on a knife's edge. The next few moments would determine whether this encounter would usher in a new era of cooperation and advancement, or plunge both species into an interstellar conflict with an ancient power beyond their comprehension. Comprehension. As Zachary and the binar females prepared to deepen their connection with the Nexus, Captain Nexus's voice cut through the tension on the bridge. Colonel Reeves, I implore you to give us more time. We're on the cusp of a breakthrough. The hybrid team clasped hands, forming a tight circle. Their eyes closed in unison as they pushed their consciousness beyond the boundaries of their own minds, reaching out to the vast alien intelligence orbiting Mars. The moment their hybrid neural network made contact with the Nexus, A surge of energy coursed through their bodies. Zachary's back arched, his muscles tensing as if electrified. Uma, Zira, Lyra, and Vela's antennae vibrated at impossible frequencies, their bodies rigid with the strain of processing the influx of information. Dr. Sierra's medical scanner beeped urgently as she monitored their vital signs. "Captain, their genetic structure is changing rapidly." On the main view screen, the image of the Nexus pulsed with an otherworldly light. The bridge crew watched in awe as tendrils of energy seemed to reach out from the alien vessel, enveloping the hybrid team in a cocoon of shimmering data. Zachary's eyes snapped open, glowing with an intense blue light. His voice, when he spoke, resonated with multiple harmonics. "The Nexus, it's unlocking something within us. Dormant genes left by the progenitors." As the crew watched, Zachary's body began to change. His muscles became more defined, his skin taking on a subtle iridescent sheen reminiscent of binar physiology. The binar females underwent their own transformations, their bodies becoming more human-like while retaining their distinctive alien features. Dr. Chen's data pad chimed insistently. He glanced at the readout, his eyes widening. "The hybridization process is accelerating, but it's stabilizing. They're adapting to the changes." Captain Nexus leaned forward, his antennae twitching with anticipation. "What are you learning?" Zachary's gaze seemed to look through the captain, focused on something beyond the confines of the ship. "The Nexus is sharing the knowledge of the progenitors, our shared heritage, the purpose of our creation." Uma's voice joined Zachary's, her words overlapping with his in perfect synchronization. "We were meant to evolve together, humans and binars, two halves of a greater whole." Dr. Syra worked feverishly at her console, inputting data as fast as she could process it. "Captain, I'm receiving detailed genetic sequences. If I can analyze them quickly enough, we might be able to stabilize their condition permanently." The ship's communication array crackled to life once more. Colonel Reeves's voice was tense with urgency. "Captain Nexus, I can't hold off any longer. We need to know if that thing is a threat. I have orders to open fire." Captain Nexus's fingers hovered over the communications panel, indecision clear on his face. But before he could respond, Zachary's voice rang out, clear and commanding. "Send her the data, Captain. Show her the truth." Without hesitation, Captain Nexus complied, transmitting the information they had gathered to Colonel Reeves's ship. For a moment, silence reigned on the bridge as they waited for a response. When it came, Reeves's voice was filled with awe. "Stand down, all weapons. I repeat, stand down. The Nexus, it's not a threat, it's a gift." A collective sigh of relief swept through the bridge. Dr. Chen turned to Captain Nexus, his expression one of excitement and trepidation. "Captain, the Nexus is transmitting schematics. They appear to be designs for hybridization chambers." Captain Nexus nodded, his decision made. "Begin construction immediately. We need to be prepared for what comes next." As the crew sprang into action, implementing the new designs, Dr. Syra continued her work on stabilizing the hybrid team's condition. She administered a series of targeted genetic therapies, carefully monitoring their effect on the rapidly evolving physiology of Zachary and the binar females. Hours passed in a flurry of activity. The hybrid team remained connected to the Nexus, their minds processing vast amounts of progenitor knowledge. As they absorbed the ancient wisdom, their bodies continued to adapt, settling into a new equilibrium that blended the best aspects of human and binar physiology. Finally, as the first hybridization chamber neared completion, the Nexus began to disengage from Mars orbit. The energy field surrounding the hybrid team dissipated, and they slowly opened their eyes, blinking as if awakening from a deep sleep. Zachary stood, his movements fluid and graceful. He looked at his hands, marveling at the subtle changes in his appearance. The binar females rose as well, their bodies now a perfect blend of human and binar traits. "It's done," Zachary said, his voice filled with wonder. "We've become what we were always meant to be." Captain Nexus approached the group, his antennae quivering with curiosity. "What happens now?" Uma stepped forward, her eyes shining with newfound knowledge. "Now we guide our people into a new era, human and binar, evolving together as the progenitors intended." As the hybrid team began to share their experiences with the captivated crew, a message came through from Earth. President Hartwell's face appeared on the main view screen, his expression a mixture of concern and hope. Captain Nexus, I've been briefed on the situation. I'm announcing the formation of an interspecies council to oversee this transition. We'll need your hybrid team to serve as advisors. Zachary nodded, accepting the responsibility. We'll do whatever we can to ensure a smooth integration, Mr. President. As the transmission ended, Dr. Nira's voice came over the communication array. Captain Nexus, I'm proposing the establishment of a joint research facility on Mars. We need to study this progenitor technology thoroughly. Captain Nexus turned to Zachary and the binar females, seeking their input. Zachary smiled, a look of purpose in his eyes. Tell her we're ready to begin. The future of both our species depends on what we do next. As the ship buzzed with activity, preparations for the new research facility already underway, Zachary and the binar females found a moment of quiet. They stood together, looking out at the red planet below, their hands intertwined. We've come so far, Zira said softly, her antennae gently brushing against Zachary's arm. Zachary nodded, his gaze fixed on the horizon. And we have so much further to go, but we'll face it together. As they watched the Martian sunrise, the hybrid team felt a sense of anticipation for the challenges that lay ahead. The journey of human binar integration was just beginning, and they would be at the forefront, guiding both species into an uncertain but promising future. As the Martian sun crested the horizon, bathing the red planet in a warm glow, Zachary and his binar partners turned their attention to the task at hand. The construction of the Mars research facility was already underway, with prefabricated modules being assembled into a sprawling complex of interconnected domes and laboratories. Zachary surveyed the progress from a makeshift command center, his newly enhanced vision picking up details that would have been invisible to his former human eyes. Uma stood beside him, her antennae gently brushing against his arm as she interfaced with the facility's computer systems. The first hybridization chamber is online, she reported, her voice a harmonious blend of human and binar tones. Dr. Chen and his team are ready to begin the initial trials. Zachary nodded, feeling a mix of excitement and apprehension. Let's proceed. We need to ensure the process is safe and stable before we open it up to larger groups. As they made their way to the main laboratory, Zira, Lyra, and Vela joined them, each monitoring different aspects of the facility's operations through their neural interfaces. The hybrid team moved with fluid grace, their bodies a perfect fusion of human and binar physiology. Inside the lab, Dr. Chen stood before a group of human volunteers, his data pad clutched tightly in his hand. As you can see, he explained, gesturing to Zachary and the binar females, the hybridization process results in significant physiological changes. You'll experience enhanced sensory perception, improved cognitive functions, and a unique ability to interface directly with advanced technology. One of the volunteers, a young woman named Sarah, stepped forward. Will it hurt? She asked, her voice trembling slightly. Zachary placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. The process itself is painless, he explained. You'll be in a state of suspended animation throughout the transformation. When you wake, you'll feel reborn. As the first group of human volunteers entered the hybridization chambers, a contingent of binars arrived, led by Dr. Nira. Her antennae twitched with almost unchecked excitement as she approached Zachary. We're ready to begin our part of the experiment, she announced. Our volunteers are eager to experience this new form of existence. Over the next several days, Zachary and his team worked tirelessly, monitoring the hybridization process around the clock. They fine-tuned the genetic algorithms, making minute adjustments to ensure optimal results. The chambers hummed with energy, bathing the subjects in a soft, pulsating light as their bodies underwent dramatic changes. On the fifth day, the first chamber's cycle completed. With a soft hiss, the pod opened, revealing Dr. Chen's transformed body. He sat up slowly, blinking as he took in his surroundings with newly enhanced senses. His skin had taken on the subtle iridescence characteristic of binar physiology, while his body had become more toned and symmetrical. How do you feel? Zachary asked, helping Chen to his feet. Chen flexed his fingers, marveling at the newfound strength and dexterity. "It's incredible," he breathed. "I can sense the facility's systems, interface with them directly. It's like a whole new world has opened up." As more chambers completed their cycles, the lab filled with newly transformed hybrids. Humans marveled at their enhanced bodies and minds, while binars explored the nuances of their more individualistic consciousness. The air buzzed with excitement and the rapid exchange of ideas. However, the success of the program didn't come without challenges. As news of the hybridization experiment spread, resistance began to mount on both Earth and the binar homeworld. Zachary received reports of protests led by human purists, while Dr. Nira faced increasing political pressure from conservative factions within the Binar High Council. "We need to address these concerns head-on," Zachary announced during a team meeting. "If we don't control the narrative, fear and misinformation will derail everything we've accomplished." Uma nodded in agreement. "A public relations campaign could help. We should invite media representatives to the facility, show them the benefits of hybridization firsthand." The team set to work, carefully selecting journalists and influential figures from both species to visit Mars. They organized tours of the facility, showcasing the harmonious cooperation between humans and binars. Hybrid scientists demonstrated their enhanced abilities, solving complex problems and making breakthrough discoveries at an unprecedented rate. As part of the campaign, Zachary and Uma agreed to participate in a public mating ritual, a deeply intimate ceremony that would be broadcast across both human and binar networks. The event was designed to highlight the unique connection possible between hybrids and to dispel misconceptions about their relationships. On the day of the broadcast, Zachary and Uma stood in a specially prepared chamber, surrounded by an array of sensors and cameras. They faced each other, their bodies glowing softly in the dim light. As the ritual began, they moved in perfect synchronization, their movements fluid and graceful. Their hands intertwined, and a visible current of energy passed between them. Their minds merged, sharing thoughts and emotions with an intensity that left the watching audience in awe. The beauty and intimacy of the event touched hearts across two worlds, helping to sway public opinion in favor of the hybridization program. In the wake of the successful PR campaign, volunteer applications for the hybridization process surged. The Mars facility expanded rapidly, with new chambers being constructed and additional staff trained to oversee the transformations. As the hybrid population grew, a unique culture began to emerge, blending elements of both human and binar societies. Zachary watched with pride as the new hybrid community flourished. They established educational programs to help individuals understand and control their new abilities, and created job opportunities that leveraged their enhanced capabilities. The Interspecies Council, guided by Zachary and his team, worked tirelessly to draft laws and regulations that would protect and nurture this new hybrid civilization. As the days stretched into weeks and weeks into months, the Mars facility became a beacon of hope and progress. But even as they celebrated their successes, Zachary couldn't shake the feeling that they had only scratched the surface of the progenitor's grand design. Late one night, as he pored over genetic data with Uma, a notification flashed across their shared neural interface. A team of hybrid scientists had made a startling discovery in one of the research labs. Zachary's pulse quickened as he absorbed the information. "Uma," he said, his voice tight with excitement, "they've found something in the progenitor code, a hidden subroutine, some kind of fail-safe mechanism." Uma's antenna quivered as she processed the data. "This could change everything," she whispered. "We need to gather the team. If we can understand this fail-safe, we might finally uncover the true purpose behind our creation." As they hurried to assemble their partners and brief the research team, Zachary felt a familiar thrill of anticipation. They stood on the brink of yet another monumental discovery, one that could reshape the future of humans, binars, and hybrids alike. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he knew they would face them together, united in their quest to unlock the secrets of their shared cosmic heritage. Legacy. As Zachary and Uma rushed to gather their team, alarms blared throughout the facility. The red emergency lights cast an eerie glow over the corridors as they sprinted towards the main research lab. "What's the status?" Zachary called out as they burst through the doors. Dr. Chen looked up from his console, his face pale. "It's unprecedented. A massive solar flare is headed our way. Our shields might not hold. Before anyone could respond, the facility shook violently. The lights flickered, and for a moment, darkness engulfed them. When the emergency power kicked in, Zachary saw fear etched on every face in the room. "Everyone, stay calm," he commanded, his voice steady despite the chaos. "We need to—" His words were cut short as a blinding light flooded the lab. The air crackled with energy, and Zachary felt a surge of power course through his body. He gasped, his enhanced senses overwhelmed by the intensity of the experience. Around him, Uma, Zira, Lyra, and Vela were undergoing similar transformations. Their bodies glowed with an otherworldly light, and Zachary could see their hybrid physiology changing before his eyes. As quickly as it began, the light faded. The facility's alarms continued to blare, but Zachary barely noticed them. He felt different, stronger, more connected to the world around him. "Is everyone all right?" he asked, looking around at his partners. Uma nodded, her antennae quivering with newfound energy. "I feel incredible. Zachary, I can sense your thoughts, not just nearby, but it's as if I could reach across the solar system." Zira stepped forward, her hands surrounded by a faint shimmering field. "And look at this," she said, her voice filled with wonder. She gestured, and a small object on a nearby table rose into the air. Dr. Chen stared at them in amazement. The progenitor failsafe. It must have activated in response to the solar flare. Your bodies have adapted to survive the extreme conditions. Zachary flexed his hand, feeling the energy coursing through him. With a thought, he created a shimmering barrier in front of him. "We need to use these new abilities. The facility, the fleets in orbit, they're all in danger." Without hesitation, the hybrid team sprang into action. Zachary led the way, extending his protective barrier around the entire facility. Uma established a telepathic link with the orbiting ships, coordinating their movements to minimize exposure to the solar radiation. Lyra and Vela worked in tandem, using their new abilities to reinforce the facility's structural integrity. Zira focused on maintaining the delicate equipment inside, preventing catastrophic failures that could have doomed their entire operation. Hours passed in a blur of activity. As the solar storm finally began to subside, Zachary and his team stood on the observation deck, surveying the Martian landscape. The red planet's surface was scorched and altered by the intense radiation, but their quick action had saved countless lives and preserved the vital infrastructure. "We did it," Zachary breathed, allowing himself a moment of relief. Uma placed a hand on his shoulder, her touch sending a spark of energy between them. "This is only the beginning, Zachary. The progenitors designed us for this, to adapt, to survive, to protect." Dr. Nira joined them, her eyes wide with excitement. "The data we've collected is astounding. The failsafe didn't just help you survive, it pushed your evolution forward by leaps and bounds. The implications are staggering." As word of their heroic actions spread, the communication channels lit up with messages from Earth and the binar homeworld. Even Admiral Krasnov, once a vocal critic of the hybridization program, sent a message of grudging respect and gratitude. President Hartwell's face appeared on the main screen, his expression a mixture of awe and persistence. "Zachary, Uma, we've called an emergency session of the Interspecies Council. We need to discuss the formation of a new organization, one led by hybrids, dedicated to protecting both our worlds from cosmic threats." Zachary exchanged glances with his partners, seeing the same commitment mirrored in their eyes. "We're ready, Mr. President. Tell us what you need." As the call ended, Zachary turned to his team. "It looks like we have a new mission," he said, a hint of a smile playing on his lips. Uma nodded, her antennae twitching with excitement. "Indeed, we'll need to start recruiting, training others to harness these new abilities." Dr. Chen stepped forward, his hybrid features glowing with enthusiasm. "I'll begin analyzing the data immediately. We need to understand every aspect of these changes if we're going to replicate them safely." As the team dispersed to begin their new tasks, Zachary found himself alone with his 4 binar partners. He looked at each of them in turn, Uma, Zira, Lyra, and Vela, marveling at how far they had come since that fateful day in his front yard. I never imagined this, he said softly, reaching out to take their hands. When we first met, I thought it was just about, well, you know. But now, Zira squeezed his hand gently. Now we're shaping the future of two species, she finished for him. Lyra nodded, her eyes shining. And we're doing it together. As they stood there, united in purpose and love, Zachary felt a surge of emotion. Without a word, they moved closer, forming a circle. Energy flowed between them, their hybrid bodies resonating in perfect harmony. In that moment, surrounded by the vastness of space and the promise of a new future, Zachary knew that their journey was not nearly finished. With their new abilities and the strength of their bond, they were ready to face whatever challenges the universe might throw their way.
If you finished this story, please subscribe and like the video. Then leave a comment that says, "I liked the story," and I will heart every single one of them. It really helps me. Thank you for your time.